everyone, and welcome back to my web scraping project. In this project, I'm collecting data from the website where a lot of companies are posting their open positions. Once I have the data, I pre-process it, clean it, and store it to the CSV file. If you were watching my previous videos, you know that I web scrape the title of the job, the company, locations, type, whether it's home office or not, salary, the URL so that you can always go to the specific job. Then I have a description and skills. Please check out my previous videos in order to understand it in detail. In this video, finally, we will collect the data and store it in the real database. And I'm using in this video the MySQL database. To begin with, please import the MySQL connector. Then you will have to install the Python MySQL. The command for that is pip install MySQL connector Python. I already installed it, so it's not gonna install it again. But if you do not have it, please install it with this command. And for connecting to the database, I will use two functions. First function, I will check if the table exists or not. If it doesn't exist, I create a new table. So in the function, I already have the SQL statement. I'm passing the cursor. Cursor is used to execute SQL queries on the MySQL database. It's a basic SQL query where you just create a job listings table with all the columns that we already have in our CSV file. So the header will be our list of columns. I already have this SQL query in the script because I want to save time. But besides the SQL query, we would also have to execute the cursor. So basically, we do have the query and now the function has to execute it. For this, you need a cursor, the one that you pass in as an argument. Then you want to use the method execute, and you want to use the string that includes the query. That's it. The main function is the next one. Insert into MySQL. In this function, we will connect to the database and we will pass the values row by row to the table. I'm using the try, except, and finally blocks. In the try block, I will have the code that potentially could throw an error. In the except block, once we do have an error, you can debug it. You can see the error from the except block. And finally block executes the script anyways, whether there is an error or not. If you do have an error in the try block, you immediately jump to the except section. But everything what you're trying to execute in the finally block, you will execute it regardless if there is an error or not. First step in this function would be to establish a MySQL connection. For this, we want the connector of MySQL. We want to use the method connect. And here we will define the credentials. But before we define that, we want to store that in the connection variable. Now let's define the parameters. We will need the host. We will need the user, the password, and the name of the database. By the way, I'm not going to install MySQL server on the laptop in this video. I assume that you already have the MySQL installed on your laptop. I'm going to use a local host. The user will be root user. I'm not going to type the password right now, but you can type the password, the one that you have for your root user. And the database, in my case, it's called karriere. You can use any database you want or you have. But remember, you need to create a database beforehand. So I already created the database that is called Karriere. Now we need to connect the cursor. Why do we connect the cursor? Because we have a lot of rows and we will iterate through each row. So first we will insert the first job, then the next one and the next one, so on and so forth. And in the next step, we want to ensure that the table exists beforehand. Therefore, here we're going to create the function that we just created. So we are not going to create it, we want to call the function that we just created. Next step is gonna insert each job entry into the database. This is the SQL query that we are using in order to insert the data. We want to specify the table. We want to specify the columns and the values. The percent sign with the S indicates that you are inserting the data dynamically, which means the first S will have Senior Data Engineer, Azure Databricks. Then the second S will insert the value for the second column. In this case, it's Gemini. And like this, you will iterate through each job. Since we cannot store lists in our MySQL database, we need to convert the lists to strings. If you remember from my previous videos, we have two columns that can store lists. They are the locations, because we can have many locations. The company can post a job for many locations. And we also have skills. This is the last column. So these are the skills, comma separated values. Therefore, we have to convert them to strings. If we do not do this, we will have a type error. So let's do first the job locations. We wanted comma separated, join, and now we're gonna join all the locations that are found in the locations column. If there are locations, because if there are no, then we do not want to insert anything, else none, it will be empty. And now the same we're gonna do for the job skills. I'm gonna copy paste it, but instead of locations we want to have skills, and in this case we also want to split it. And this is missing here. Good. Now we want to execute the SQL query. For this we need a cursor, execute method or command. We want to pass the insert query, and now we want to pass the data. So we want to pass a value for each column and for each job. That's why we want to specify the job, and first column gonna be the title, then company, then job locations. We already converted that, that's why I'm just writing down job locations. I'm passing this variable. job type, job home office, job salary, job URL, job description, and job skills. That's it. Now we need to commit the transaction. If we do not commit it, then the data will not be stored. Connection commit. And I already wrote down the print statement. It's very useful to have the print statement because then you can check or you can monitor where exactly you are in your script. In the finally section, we need to check if the connection is still open. Connection is connected. Then we need to close the cursor. We want to close the connection. And we do have the print statement already. Don't forget to modify the main function. In the main function, if you remember from the previous video, we had specified the CSV file where we're inserting the data. Here, we just call the function insert into MySQL, the one that we just created or completed, and we pass the data. So I will fill out the parameters and run the script, and we will see the result. Running the script, I do have an error, and the error is because I have skill instead of skills. So I will correct it to skills because the name of the column is skills. So that's why we need to specify the plural, the skills, because we need the name of the column here. And now let's try to run the script again. Once it's completed, let's check the database. So we have our karriere database and we have a table. So let's refresh it. The name of the table, job listings. And now let's see what's inside the table. Select all rows and we have 16 rows. And here the print statement says the same. So we inserted 16 records, which is already good. And here you go. You have all information nicely stored in the table, the same as you had in the previous video in the CSV file. And now the reason why I wanted the salary to be the decimal and per month, because you can easily filter the rows right now. For example, select all columns from the table where salary is more than, let's say, 4,000. So we have 16 rows, and since we do have some rows, some salaries that are less than 4,000, they should be filtered out. And now we have only 15. Only one company was posting the job with less than 4,000, and now let's increase it to 5,000. So you have only one job. So like this, you can, of course, it's very little amount of data. We have only 16 rows. If you increase it and if you also change, because I'm filtering to data engineer only. If you are using the same script for many job positions, then you will have, or if you actually schedule a job that that web scrapes the data and inserts into the database, then you will have a lot of jobs. And like this, you can filter out the jobs you want or you like, or the ones that you need. Thank you for watching this video, and in the next section, the next video will be the last one, and in the next video I will try to compare my CV to the jobs that I've stored in the database, and using cosine similarity or some other algorithms, I will try to find the best suitable job positions according to my CV.